It was a warm Saturday morning when Aisha decided to go for a walk in the park. She put on her headphones, opened her favorite podcast app, and clicked on a new episode titled, English Podcast for Speaking English Shadowing Practice. Aisha was not a native English speaker, but she had always wanted to improve her speaking skills. She had tried grammar books, vocabulary lists, and even online classes. But the one thing that helped her most was shadowing practice, listening and repeating what she heard in English podcasts. As the episode began, a calm voice said, "Hello, and welcome to today's English podcast. This episode is designed for speaking English and shadowing practice. Listen carefully, and repeat after me." Aisha smiled. She loved this method. It felt like she was talking to someone, even when she was alone. The podcast continued. "My name is John. I will read a short story. Please repeat after me, sentence by sentence. Ready? Let's begin." Aisha repeated softly, almost whispering as she walked. "My name is John. I will read a short story. Please repeat after me. Ready? Let's begin." She heard her own voice mixing with the podcast voice, and it gave her confidence. People passing by might have thought she was talking to herself, but she didn't care. She was practicing English. The story in the podcast was about a boy named Tom who wanted to learn how to swim. Aisha repeated each line carefully. Tom was afraid of the water. Tom was afraid of the water, she echoed. But he wanted to learn. But he wanted to learn, she repeated. As the story continued, Aisha noticed something interesting. At first, she repeated slowly, word by word. But after 10 minutes, her speed increased. She was matching the rhythm of the podcast voice almost perfectly. Her tongue felt more flexible, her mouth moved faster, and her confidence grew. The podcast teacher then gave advice. When you shadow, don't worry about mistakes. Focus on rhythm, intonation, and flow. Speak like the speaker. Feel the music of English. Aisha loved that sentence, feel the music of English. It made her realize that speaking English was not only about grammar, it was about sound, emotion, and flow. She kept practicing until she reached the end of the episode. Then, the podcast invited her to a challenge. Now, tell the story in your own words. You don't need to repeat exactly. Just speak freely. Aisha took a deep breath. She was nervous, but she tried. Tom was afraid of the water. But he wanted to learn. He went to the swimming pool every day. At first, he stayed near the edge. Slowly, he moved to the middle. One day, he swam across. He was so happy. Her sentences were not perfect, but she felt proud. She had told a story in English, without reading or memorizing. As she continued her walk, she thought about her journey with English. When she first started, she was shy and silent. She avoided speaking because she was afraid of mistakes. But now, with shadowing practice, she felt more natural. She spoke without thinking too much about grammar. Later that evening, Aisha sat at her desk and recorded her own voice. She compared it with the podcast. Her pronunciation was not exactly the same, but she noticed big improvements. She sounded clearer, smoother, and more confident than before. She sent a voice message to her friend Maria, who was also learning English. "Hi Maria, today I practiced with a shadowing podcast. It was amazing. We should do it together sometime." Maria replied, "That sounds fun. Let's practice tomorrow. We can shadow the same episode and then talk about it." Aisha smiled. She realized something important. Learning English was not only about study, but also about practice, connection, and joy. The next day, Aisha and Maria met online. They both played the same podcast and repeated together. Sometimes they laughed when they made mistakes, but they encouraged each other to continue. By the end of the week, Aisha felt a big change. She no longer paused too much when speaking. She no longer translated from her language in her head. Instead, English words came naturally, like a flow of water. One evening, Aisha joined an online English-speaking club. At first, she felt nervous because she had to talk to strangers from different countries. But when it was her turn, she remembered the podcast and the shadowing practice. She spoke clearly, with confidence. "Hello everyone, my name is Aisha. I like learning English with podcasts. I practice shadowing every day, and it really helps me speak better." The group clapped and smiled. The teacher said, "Wonderful, Aisha. Your pronunciation is very good, and your speaking is smooth. Keep practicing like this, and you will be fluent soon." That night, Aisha felt proud of herself. She realized that the small daily practice, listening, repeating, and shadowing, was building her skills step by step. She thought about the boy in the story, Tom. He was afraid of the water, but he kept practicing until he could swim. She felt the same. She had been afraid of speaking, but now she was speaking freely. Before sleeping, she listened to the end of the podcast episode again. The host said, "Remember, practice a little every day. Shadow the voice. Speak with confidence. Step by step, your English will grow. Thank you for listening." Aisha whispered, "Thank you, and yes, I will keep practicing." And with that promise, she closed her eyes, ready for another day of learning.